All right. I'm going to take a look at a really cool concept today, which is basically a flat three blue note leading to a major three. But I'm going to do that with underscoring the idea of plural practice and practice systems. So, what I mean by plural practice is you should always be thinking of harmony, melody, and also the concept that you're working on at that time. Now, when we build practice systems in order to practice more efficiently, more economically, get more out of our practice time, we don't just play, try to learn a new arpeggio that we don't have pinned down to anything else. For instance, you just take something like this and you play it 100 times, and but you don't understand how it relates to anything else, right? And so that's where the idea of plural practice comes into mind. So, for instance, rather than just taking an arpeggio like that, I should understand where that arpeggio is coming from, right? So obviously, it's spelling out a dominant seventh chord, right? So I can justify that. I can say, well, here it's a dominant seventh chord. Here's my dominant seventh, and I'm playing this arpeggio, right? Good enough? No, it's still not good enough. We can get more out of that. Underneath that, where we get those notes from for the arpeggio is the mixolydian mode in this case, because that's where the chord comes from as well. We think of the mixolydian mode when we think of a dominant seventh chord sound. And there's lots of really good reasoning for that. So now you're getting into plural practice territory, right? So you're not just playing one arpeggio in one position and doing that over and over again, and not relating it to a chord and not relating it to a mode or a scale. If that's the way you're practicing, then it's a shortcoming in your practice, and you're missing valuable practice time and a valuable practice concept. So now another thing, if you are let's say you're practicing your mixolydian mode, and then you play a chord, and then maybe after that you play the arpeggio, play the chord, move up one fret. Now this starts to become a complete. You play the mixolydian mode, you play the arpeggio, and then move all the way up and down the fretboard. What we're talking about here is doing this from a root on sixth. So what the practice is, what the plural practice is I'm playing my dominant seventh chord on root on sixth, and I'm playing the related mixolydian mode with its related arpeggio, right? That becomes solid plural practice. If you do that for 10 minutes, and you do that kind of practice for 10 minutes each day, you're gonna get somewhere. Now that was just root on six. Well, we could do, of course, the same thing. Arpeggio, chords, mixolydian mode, right? And then move up and down the fretboard. You're looking for 5 different chord types and 5 different modes, vertical modes, and 5 different vertical arpeggios, no matter what chord or scale type you're playing. Major 7, minor 7, dominant 7th, altered chords, whatever. You're going to be coming up short if you don't fill up the fretboard with every possibility. You've all heard caged and people, there's a huge misunderstanding with what that actually is, and I've heard it attempts at explaining it over and over again. But suffice to say that if you take caged, there's the C chord, there's the A chord, there's a G chord, and there's an E chord, and there's a D chord, and that spells the word caged. Okay, that's just in one key, right? It starts with the key of C, but you can see that I filled up the entire fretboard. So underneath C, right? Underneath that I have C. Underneath that I have another C, and another, right? Now I filled up the entire fretboard. The same applies to every single key. And the same is going to apply to every single arpeggio you learn, every single scale you learn. Whether, as I said, major, minor, seventh, doesn't matter. Okay. So at the top, I said I wanted to make this about practice. I want to talk about practice more, because that's what's going to get you where you want to go. Practice is not about, it can be a little tiny bit of it can be about, hey, watch where that guy's putting his fingers and I'm going to put mine there too, and then I'll learn something. Well, you should think about that a little bit, because in fact, you may not be learning anything. You have to understand what is happening in the player's mind. And that's why we have stuff like theory, right? And I know it's a scary word for a lot of people. Okay, so at the top I was talking about the flat 3. So if I take the dominant seven arpeggio, and I know that comes from my Mixolydian mode, the most common altered note is the blue note is the flat 3. So now I can figure out where the 3s are. 1, 2, 3. There's 1. 1, 2, 3. There's another one at the octave. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. There's another one at the octave. And now what we want to do is lower each one of those 3s, thereby giving a sort of a leading tone to the 3. Right? You hear? In each case, I'm playing that. Now, when you're practicing this, think of moving that leading tone on the way up, and then on the way down, you have to go from the flat 3 to the major 3. Right, and this becomes material that's musical, right? I'm not suggesting that playing arpeggios like that, and trying to get an arpeggio like that over every chord is going to be of any real musical value. What is going to be of musical value is you'll know where to put your fingers, and you'll know what a flat 3 is, and you'll know what that flat 3 sound does. Right? I looked at a tune the other day. There's an example of that flat 3 going to the major 3. It's a classic move, and it's a move that you should practice within all of your dominant 7th arpeggios. Okay, and that becomes another method of plural practice, because now you've added a new harmonic, melodic dimension to the chord. I think it's particularly interesting as well when we when we take a look at chords like this has got a major 3 on the bottom and a minor 3 on the top. Right? So when it's about learning cool sounds and being able to identify those sounds in your playing. There's way too many of you that are doing all this noodling stuff. That your whole raison d'etre is to play as fast as you possibly can. And man, for one, I can only listen to that for like 2 minutes, and then I'm like moving on. Music comes from your mind, from your head, and you have to educate your mind, and you have to educate your mind with sounds, and then you practice those sounds, you categorize those sounds, you think about those sounds when you go to sleep. And so I do, especially now when I'm starting to practice more. So I said what I wanted to say. Plural practice and practice systems. And when you practice, I've done a video about practice. I've done a couple about practice now. If you're serious about learning this instrument, if you're serious about learning any instrument, you have to put practice principles into your practice time, so you don't just waste your time. And make sure to keep your ears open and listen for these sounds like flat 5s and raised 9s and so on. And they're like delicious, right? You're making music when you know what these sounds are like. It's all about your ears. It's not about patterns. It's not about visual representations. It's not about seeing how fast you can play, the faster than the other guy. This isn't a race to anything, right? It's about making music, listening to sounds, and the joy of doing that. See you soon.